Welcome to TikTok. Have fun. Well, I believe I'm live. TikTok. Yes, I'm live. I see the tick on the clock moving. Okay. Hello, everybody. And well, I seem excited, but not really, because what I'm gonna talk about is my basketball years. For those who haven't heard this before, uh, this might be new to TikTok for me, talking about my basketball experience. And it started, I saw somebody today on a video, and this guy is 6'11", and he's Nigerian. He came over from Nigeria, I believe, at a very young age. I don't believe he was born here. He might have been born here, but anyway, yeah, I think he was born here, but his parents came over and from Nigeria. So he was kind of Americanized, but of course, they made sure he kept up with his heritage, his Nigerian heritage. So um, what I wanted to talk about, well, he talked about being in junior high school and being like 6'4". So he was destined to be about 6'11". His sister was 6'5", and everybody, all the kids in his family, I think it was five of them, were over 6 feet. So but anyway, he didn't start playing basketball until late. Most guys start playing at a very young age, even in elementary school. But surely they are playing. They know the game by the time they're in junior high school. So he had that growth spirit. So he wasn't interested in basketball, but they kept saying, "Look, you looks like you're going to be tall, so you might want to learn how to play the game." So he got out there and talked about how awful he was, and he never did. He kept getting cut in his high school, from his high school team, although he was tall, huge. And they really wanted him to perform, say, low computer performance detected. I hope you all can hear me okay, and I guess I have to look at that later and see why it is doing that. But anyway, he ended up started playing late, so he was awful, but he kept growing, and he got into AAU basketball. Never did make the high school team because he was still developing. Like he said, it was a process. But he developed in a pretty good player in AAU, and got a scholarship. But he was a real bright guy. I think he skipped a couple of grades, and he got admitted to Harvard to play basketball, but also because of his academic uh, record. But he went there and didn't want to play. I mean, he didn't feel the vibe there, so he ended up going to Vanderbilt in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. But anyway, I said that to say that it's kind of the same thing happened to me. Of course, I'm not 6'11". I grew to be 6'5", but uh, I wasn't interested in basketball early on, like a lot of the other guys that were playing organized ball early on. By the time I got to junior high school, which is middle school now, I was in the orchestra. I was an orchestra nerd, and wasn't was kind of interested in basketball, but wasn't serious about it. I'd get out there and play, and sometimes I would get picked, and sometimes I wouldn't. And right during the time I was in junior high school, I broke my ankle out wrestling with a bunch of guys, and so and I had to get an operation. It was a real bad break, and so spent some time in the hospital and came home, spent some time at home before I could navigate the crutches and go back to school. But during that time, I started growing. I think I remember one of my cousins came over to see me and said, since you've been laying down, it looked like you've grown a couple of inches. And he was kind of right. I mean, I grew a little bit. It was my growth spurt during that time, which had some of the doctors concerned with the bad break I had on my ankle, that it might hurt that particular leg from growing. And I still have a slight limp from that, but that other people notice, but I've had it so long I don't notice, but other people notice, how I walk. But it was from that broken ankle. But anyway, getting back to the growth spurt, and then the summer came and it seemed like I had a, and just like I was telling you about the other gentleman that was 6'11", one of my cousins told me, he said, looks like you're going to be tall, man. You might want to start practicing on the basketball. I said, what? It really didn't interest me. I wanted to continue playing my cello. And, I kept getting asked. And then one of my uncles one Christmas gave me a basketball hoop that my dad had put up on the garage to my dad was 6'4", and he played basketball in college. And so he wasn't pushing me, but he kind of saw that I was growing, and so he encouraged me, put that goal on the back, get out there and practice. So I would get out there and practice. I was kind of into it, but then the more I practiced, the more I started liking it. But I was liking it more than my abilities were growing. I was getting more used to playing, but my abilities hadn't caught up to how much I liked it yet. You see, and then I started watching on TV Wilt Chamberlain back there, Bill Russell back there in the days. A lot of you people don't know about, but and I couldn't watch a whole game without going out there on the court and trying some of the things they were doing. But that was me practicing by myself, which is a whole different thing in playing organized ball with other guys. I mean, you could be the star out there by yourself, and I was. I mean, I would throw the ball up like that someone was passing it to me, and I'd catch it, do my little moves, and turn around, and make the basket, feeling proud of myself. But no one was guarding me. So, but when I got to the opportunity to play against other people, it was awful. I mean, the guys were stealing the ball from me. I hadn't learned how if you're tall and you get the ball, you have to hold it up above your head, because if you hold it down like this and you're looking around what to do with it, the little guys would come by, steal the ball, go down the other end of the court, make the shot. So that was happening to me a lot, because I just wasn't used to, one thing, being as tall as I was growing. Excuse me. And back then, you were going, I think I was getting up to about 6 feet, and very few of the guys in my neighborhood were that tall. Yeah, even though a lot of them were taller than me when we were much younger, and I was just shooting up past them. But those guys had skills because they were out there playing ball. I remember them always telling me, "Man, I wish I had your height. I would be this and that." And I'm saying, well, I had nothing to do with it. I'm just living and growing. But anyway, so I got the basketball fever, and I really liked it and really wanted to be good. But, like I said, my skills hadn't caught up with me, and I really didn't have someone. My cousin would get out there every once in a while and try to tell me certain things and embarrass me. I'm standing there trying to guard him. He would dribble right between my legs and come out on the other side and make a layup. That's how, that's how my defense was. But anyway, I was getting a little better, but the competition with other players, the team ball, that's what I was lacking. That's what I really needed. And I wasn't getting that. And when I started getting that, guys would just, take advantage of me, even though I was taller than them. I could block their shots if they came within my area, I would block the shots, but they would make moves. After they would figure it out and make moves and just go around me or stay away from me and shoot the ball. And like I said, they would steal the ball from me. My shot wasn't effective. I didn't take advantage of the fact that I was taller than most and use that to my advantage. And so that was something I had to learn. But, you know, it came, and I think if I had played more organized ball at a younger age, I probably would have been much better sooner, which would have helped me. So by the time I went to another school, and the IC Norcom was the premier, predominantly black school here in the city of Portsmouth, Virginia, where I grew up and still live. And so players that come through that school that were, guys would get cut from that school that could play at any other school. That's how tough the competition was at IC Norcom, because you're thinking about it, one time, everybody who was black went to this same high school. So you're talking about talent from all over the city of Portsmouth going to one high school. Now the integration was starting, but it still hadn't gotten to the point where we were fully integrating into the white schools. And the guys that went to the white schools, I mean, they were like stars. I mean, they were automatically making the team, and where they might have gotten cut at Norcom, not because they didn't have the top talent, but the coaches. It was a coach's dream. I mean, he had in basketball, I think 14 players or something like that, 15, 14, or maybe less. Um, and he had the pick of the litter, and he had to cut guys that he knew he wished he could have kept. But, he had to come down to, who had the attitude and all that. But anyway, so by the time I went to this other school that wasn't predominantly black, I just wanted to see all coming up through my educational career up into high school. I'd gone to all black schools. So I had integration was there, and you had freedom of choice. So I said, I'm going to go to this school called Woodrow Wilson. It was predominantly white. And so went there, just to see, what it was like, and it was different. The better lunches, well, I'm not going to say better lunches. No, I'm going to say they had choices for your lunches. If you had the regular lunch, or if you didn't want that, you had another choice. At Norcom, I'll tell you about that when I get there to that. And so I went through that first year there and thought about going out for basketball, but I realized real early, just watching some of the practices, I wasn't good enough for that. The guys that were playing, and excuse me, I don't know what's going on. I said I wasn't going to embarrass myself and get out there. So I went that year, and by that time I had stopped playing in the orchestra because I wanted to pursue basketball. So I went through that year, and the next year it came up. They zoned my neighborhood to IC Norcom, so the freedom of choice was out. So, and I was ready at that time to go to Norcom. I had had the white experience per se, and one thing that sort of discouraged me about that, we had an assembly. The principal at Woodrow Wilson called an assembly with all the guys, all the boys, special assembly. And we all got in there, white and black, and his focus was on the black guys who at that time were just starting to grow the afros. And evidently he didn't understand, that. Because the white guys were in there, they had to, this was the late 60s, so, they had the hair hanging down to their shoulders. But the black guys were, of course, our hair was going up and out, and he wasn't used to that. But he actually was telling us we needed to be more groomed, and we need to cut our hair because we looked like gorillas. He actually said that out of his mouth, the principal. And all the black guys got up and walked out, and had a short protest. But we eventually went back. But anyway, so when it came down, I was ready to go to Norcom. I was ready for my continue my black experience. And I, satisfied that urge to figure out how the other half lived or learned. And so I got to Norcom, and then my cousin still in my ear, look, you need to go out for the team. By that time I was about 6'4", 6'3.5" or 6'4". I hadn't quite got up to my peak height, which is 6'5". Didn't get there well until later. But anyway, so I said, okay, I'll go out, and went out for went out for the team. So then they pick who they want and say, okay, this group will be on the JV, and we have this group for the varsity. Very seldom did freshmen make the varsity, but there were some exceptions. Freshmen would come in and be good enough to make the varsity, but most times the JV was a junior varsity. If you had promise, they would put you there, and you work your way to the varsity, each year. But each year you had to go out. You had to try out. It was only a few people that were show-ins. Some of the guys, they would hold spots that would play football, that were pretty much some of the best players in basketball. So it was certain spots that were already taken in the varsity. But anyway, going back to, I got on the junior varsity team, and I'll be honest with you, I believe, and I'm sure other players on there and other guys probably knew that one of the reasons I made it, because my dad was friends with the former coach, and he had just left there before I got there to go and coach on the college level. But he was a long time coach at IC Norcom, and my dad knew him. My dad never said anything to me, but it was some guys that were a lot better than me that got cut. And somehow I made it. And I wasn't the best player. I was, that first year on junior varsity, I didn't start. And this is my sophomore year now. I didn't start, but I got into the game occasionally. And, some moves I made that were, I look back now, they were funny. I mean, this tall, lanky guy coming there, uncoordinated, and I'm doing things that, I remember, a lot of times hearing the crowd laughing. but as the year went on, I got better. I never did start, but I was learning more on the job, per se, how to play organized ball. And remember I said earlier, I never really played organized ball. I played back there on my goal a lot of times in the beginning by myself, and then guys would come over, and we had some pretty good games back there on that half court, on that little goal. But it was nothing like what I really needed, the experience of playing, on an organized team early, which I didn't get. So I'm on the JV team in high school, learning there on the job how to play organized ball, and how to play with teammates. But I really enjoyed that experience. But it was tough sometimes, because I knew I was just learning how to really play, to be honest with you. But I had that height. And back during that time, the late 60s, early 70s, 6'3", 6'4", I mean, that was pretty good height for basketball, high school, And so I was in high school. I was still growing. And, I was still growing. And I got to the point where I was at 6'4". So when the next year came, Uh, I went out, of course, like I said, you had to try out every year, because just because you played the previous year didn't mean you were going to make the team this year, because it could have been someone, if you were mediocre, if you weren't as good, um, you had the chance of being cut that next year if someone came that was better than you and deserved that spot. So you had to compete every year to play it, unless you were one of the stars. The stars, the guys that were really good at basketball and were contributing to a lot of the victories. So those guys were assured, although they still had to come to the tryouts and be a part of that session. But you knew they weren't going to get cut. But they had to go through the same things everybody else did. And it would be a lot of guys coming out, and so the first day, the coach had to cut, you know, guys that, obviously he said, it was, that probably was the easiest cut for him the first day, because so many guys came out and so many guys that didn't fit what he was looking for, the coaches were looking for. So that was the easiest cut, that first cut. And then it got more difficult, I believe, for the coaches. But then it came down where I remember after my first JV year, I remember the coach, the varsity coach, told me that, look, work on your game during the summer, because we're going to look for you, because he knew, I was, still growing, and he saw potential and needed that, all the coaches wanted that height, and wanted the ability to develop you into someone that they could use that height on their team. And it wasn't a lot of guys that were 6'5" or 6'4", but we had a few that were around 6'4" or something like that. But and then had a guy come in my senior year from New York that was like 6'7", I believe. He didn't even play the whole year, but they call him Giant. But anyway, so it's my junior year, and when we tried out, I think before the last cut, the varsity coach, was making a speech with the guys that were, the last cut. You had guys that were really good, but he had to cut the team down, so he had to make the speech to make sure the guys that he had to cut would not feel too bad, because you made it this far. That means that you have a good game, and I would love to keep you, but I can't keep all of you. And just hold your head up high if you don't make it this time, and just keep, you have more time other times, except unless you're a senior, to come out again. And I remember him just saying it right in front of me. So, Overton, you didn't develop like I wanted you to. Uh, like I told you to work on your game during the summer. You almost there, but you're not quite there. But I'm gonna keep you. But I'm gonna keep you on JV. So this is the thing. Now, a lot of guys that came on JV would come and be on JV their freshman year, and they might go from their freshman to the varsity, or they had another year to play JV. It was uncharacteristic for someone that was a junior in high school, and a lot of people don't know this, that weren't there, that I did play my junior year on the JV. And I think I think that might have been against the rules, and I'll tell you why later. I played JV. He wanted to keep me, but he had who he wanted for the varsity. If I had improved enough in his eyes over the summer, like he told me to, I probably would have been on the varsity on that junior year. But he wanted to keep me developing, or it might have been that thing like I told you earlier, you know, favoritism. I got to admit it could have been there because a lot of other guys were better than me, and and I think it had something to do with a lot of times guys that had the ability didn't have the right attitude, and that was important to a lot of coaches at that time. Attitude, ability was important, but we don't want to put up with your bad attitude or how you carried yourself in school. But you know, I don't know. But so I played a second year of JV, which wasn't unusual, but it was unusual for a junior to be playing JV. And I wanted to be embarrassed, but I said, okay, I'll go ahead and play. But that particular time, I started. I was the starting center and was pretty good at that level. Um, and we had a pretty good team in JV because one thing about back then at Norcom and most of the schools, the JV games, and this was that before before they had girls teams. So the JVs would play right before the varsity, and the games would be so popular. People would come early so they can make sure they can get in the game because some of the gyms, certain schools you played, it was so popular the gyms would fill up and people outside would get cut off. They could only hold so many people. But our games, the JV games, got to be just as exciting as the varsity games. The other JV teams that came in there were full of talent because they had guys on their JV teams that were moving up, or the varsity coach was holding on and preparing to go to varsity. So our JV games were very competitive, and so people came early to make sure they got into the varsity. But they enjoyed our games and cheered for us really hard too. The only thing, our games didn't count like the varsity games, but it was, exciting to be on the JV and have that type of crowd cheering the sub players, the opening act per se, and and it was fun, and I think they did at the end of that JV season they did have a playoff for the JV teams, and we had a pretty, I don't remember what our record was, but we had beat most of the other JV teams. We had a pretty good team because that whole team pretty much moved up the next year to the varsity, except guys who didn't want to play anymore. They concentrated on football or whatever. They didn't want to play for the coach or whatever reason. And but we didn't go to that tournament. We were kind of upset, and I really believe it was the reason the coaches knew that they probably had a player that wasn't supposed to be playing JV, and thought about this years later, but they might have known, and other players might have known it then, and but nobody really blamed me to my face or said anything to my face. They might have talked about it after, but I think some of them knew that the reason we didn't go to that tournament, which we probably would have swept, we probably would have won, or we felt like we would have won, was because they had probably a player that wasn't supposed to be playing JV. I don't know. I don't know if it just wasn't a custom for a junior in high school to be still playing JV, although this was my second year, and typically, sometimes the JV players played 2 years. If it was no room for them on the varsity at that time to keep them in the play, they played for 2 years. Although most of them moved up after their first year, but that's the way it was. And whether it was a privilege or not, I really enjoyed, and some of the things I learned about teamwork, and some of the friends that I made playing basketball are still friends today. We get together and talk about it. So that next year, on my senior year, I did make the varsity. Nowhere in the world I could have played another year of junior varsity, but excuse me, they kept me, and I don't think they kept me. I think I had improved enough to really make the team. I did not start, but you have to play a certain amount of hours in order to receive a letter. You can be on the team if you don't play enough. You're not going to get a letter. But I played enough, substituted enough in order to receive a letter in basketball, which very proud of that, even though I didn't start. And one of the things that really hurt our senior season was when we had the boycott at Norcom. Well, a lot of the students walked out, and I walked out, but my dad just let me stay out for one day, and I had to go back to school. But it was it was right during the basketball season, early during the basketball season. I think we hadn't even started playing games yet. We were still practicing, and I can remember the coach. It was almost like one of these basketball movies. The coach made this long speech about how black he was, and he believed in us, what we wanted, what we believed in as far as saving the schools, and we had to walk out in order to do that. So he made this long speech and then said, now if you all want to walk off and leave the team, it's up to you. And I'm sure he thought that by making that long speech, we all were going to say, no, coach, we want to play, just like you might have seen in a movie. And we all looked at each other and said, okay. We got up and started walking out, leaving the gym, because we felt we felt strongly about what they were trying to do. We felt like we thought they were trying to close the school or change the name of IC Norcom, which was dear to our hearts. Was the historic significance of that was something that we did not want to lose. So we got up as a team after sitting there listening to that speech, and he made a great speech, but we felt more strongly about saving our school than playing basketball, really, even though we really wanted to play. But we got up, and after he said, well, if you really feel strong, you can get up and leave. And and no, we didn't react like he thought. No, coach, we want to play for you. Yes, sir. We got up and walked out. We got to the door. He yelled at us. He said, come back here. And he ran us until our tongues fell out. He was upset because we just looked at each other and got up and said, okay, hey, see you, coach, But, of course, a few of them still walked out after he ran us to death, and they didn't come back. So some guys that probably had been cut got an opportunity to come back and play. And we played out that year, but we lost some of our key players because they walked out, and we didn't have the year that we should have had. But we had a decent year. We had fun playing, and we did the best we could, and it gave one of my best friends an opportunity to come back and play. He had tried out with me every time I tried out, and every time he got cut, and he was a pretty good player in my eyes. We grew up in the same neighborhood, uh, played all kinds. He was one of those athletic guys that could play anything, but he got cut every year. He went out, but when that thing happened in our senior year, he was the coach liked him and had him around being, as the statistician, and so he was traveling with us to every game and everything, and he was a part of the team. He just wasn't on the team, but he got that opportunity our senior year to wear the uniform, and we had a good time. And a lot of times we got in the game at the same time, and I remember throwing him we were leading by, the team was leading by 20 points, and we got in the game, and I got a rebound and threw him on a fast break, and he went down and scored 2 points and turned around and said, "Let's go back." We already lead by 20 points. He was so excited to be on the team for one and then scoring that basket. And we joke about that today, but um, appreciate having that opportunity to play basketball at IC Norcom. Regardless of how I was on the team, I did wear the uniform. I'm proud of wearing the uniform. I will never be one of the guys inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame like many of the players that played with me that are already in there, the high school Sports Hall of Fame, because I didn't have that kind of career, but I still feel just as proud of wearing that uniform of that historic IC Norcom High School. Even my senior year, I went out for track, made the track team, and never had made the track. I did the first year I was at Woodrow Wilson. I was on the track team and never competed in any race. I was on the track indoor track team, and I was supposed to have been a high jumper. So you have three main high jumpers, that compete in every meet, and I was number four, waiting for somebody to get hurt. Very seldom high jumpers get injured, not unless they're doing something else. So I went that whole season. It's very well because nobody really, I was just on the team. Went that whole season dressing up for all the indoor meets. So I got a chance to see some of the fastest guys at that time. Varian Rollins, he was like one of the fastest guys in the state. Compete every track meet and travel, get out of class sometime early to go to a track meet. So that gave me experience. So I never did the track, but my senior year, I said, let me go out for track. I mean, your senior year, you've pretty much done everything, and you're glad. I didn't have but 4 classes that I had to take, and so I had 2 study halls, and one of them I worked in the library. I thought that was going to be a piece of cake, and the librarian in there knew my parents and worked me to. I was like a job. I thought it was going to be an easy thing, and one of my jobs were to that hour I had to go from classroom to classroom looking for students that had overdue books. Like the enforcer of overdue books, but that was a good experience too. And then the other the other study hall I had, being an athlete, I worked in the gym. So I would be in the gym. So whatever gym classes were in there, some of the younger, I helped the teacher out with that. And end up, one of my coaches, track coach, asked me to help him out in driver's ed. So I was actually one of the driver's ed teachers, not teaching per se, but would you had this lot on campus on the school grounds that you know you had driver's ed taught at school then. It was mandatory. So I would sit in the car. We had a brake on my side and ride around with some of the students, when the coach was riding around with somebody else. So uh, this one particular time I'm riding around with the girl. She wasn't doing so well. So I said, look, pull over to the side and let me take it to the back, because taking it back to the back, cars were parked there, and I didn't think she could do it. She pulled over and all of a sudden hit the gas, ran right into the school, the building. Bam! And I'm sitting there with my foot on the brake, but it happened so fast. I'm just sitting there with my foot on the brake. And I thought the coach was going to say, thanks, but no thanks anymore. And I stopped going, and he came looking for me. He said, "Where you been, man? I still need you to help me in driver's ed." So, but that was my experience there. I went off with other things, but basketball experience, and one other thing before I sign off. Uh, when I went to my first year in college, I went to Virginia Union, and my freshman year, and I didn't go there to play basketball because I didn't go there to play basketball, you know. But my first roommate came from New York, and he came there to play basketball like a guard, and he convinced me. And they had a freshman team. It was like the JV in high school. They had a freshman team at Virginia Union. Again, it's before the girls' team was developed. Once the girls' team was developed in college, no more freshman team. But anyway, they had a freshman team. And he said, "Come on, go out." And he convinced me. And I went out, and the coach for the freshman team at that time, he was asking me, he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia." I said, "I went to IC Northam." He said, "Oh, well, what's your name?" I said, "Overton." He said, "Yeah, I remember you." And nowhere in the world he remembered me, not unless he was watching bench players or he watched me during my JV year when I was starting. But anyway, I think it was the IC Northam thing. You know, he knew that good players came out of there, so he just assumed I was one of them. But anyway, I went out for the freshman team, and I made that, and was starting center there. 6'5". Uh, but one of the things I realized, 6'5" center in college, guards was 6'5". Was starting to be 6'5", and I just played that one year with no aspirations of going any further. I just did it as a favor with for my roommate, and kind of enjoyed that as well. Going and at the time, other schools like Virginia State, other HBCUs like Virginia State and Elizabeth City, they had freshman teams as well. And the schools that didn't have freshman teams, we played junior colleges. And some of them junior colleges came there with guys that were 6'10", and I'm 6'5", center under the basket, and their center was 6'10", and that's when I realized, it's been fun playing on the freshman team, but nowhere in the world I could go any further. Probably wouldn't have made the team anyway, but it was fun going to those Virginia State and Elizabeth City and playing against some of my ex-Norcom players who had gone to those schools and was on their freshman teams. So that was an experience too. So my basketball experience was wasn't one where I was the star. You always hear about the stories about the stars and their rise to fame and all that, or the disappointments from injuries that derailed their careers, uh, which is why you should always make sure that you have a backup plan. If your focus is basketball, make sure you have a backup plan. When you go to college, you're going there to earn a degree and learn a skill, just in case that basketball thing doesn't work out. But it was an interesting year. And if anybody out there had something um, similar to mine as far as a basketball career that wasn't the most important thing in your life, but it played a significant part of your high school days or college days, and help you in other areas of your life as far as knowing how to deal with people, and like I mentioned earlier, learning teamwork and how to work with others, you know, uh, knowing that it takes more than just one person in many cases, to complete a job, to be successful. So, thanks everybody for watching, and we're going to keep coming back to TikTok on location. I'm not going to always just be sitting here rambling on, but I had to tell that basketball story for anybody that mm, was interested in it. Let me know. If you were not, let me know too. It's not going to hurt my feelings. But, you I just wanted to tell that story, especially the part about being on the JV as a junior. I no one really joked me about that, but I knew everybody knew that that was an unusual thing. But they did really, my friends really supported me uh, in those games. We had a high school fraternity called the Imperial Psi Epsilon. So my brothers would come to the game and sit in a group and cheer on their fellow member uh, before the main game started. So by the time we finished, I could come out, I do my shower, come out, and dress and do my shower and come out, and I could sit with my brothers and cheer on the varsity during those years. And then my senior year, they could cheer me on whether I was on the bench or when I got in the game. They could cheer me on. But what a great experience it was, and certainly would want to hear about your experiences, either in basketball or whatever you did, the debate team, whatever you did, because a lot of those things we did in high school, they were our formative years, and they really had a lot to do with how we uh, how we ended up today. Those sports things, along with what we learned in the classroom. But it was really some lessons learned, and we knew how much we could endure, because those practices were no joke, especially in the beginning. Just like the difference is now, the guys with the AAU and other opportunities, the basketball players now, they play year round, and they always going outside of going to tournaments and playing against competition all around the local areas and sometime out of state before the season starts. So by the time the season starts in these high school level games, these guys are ready. You know, we would play sandlot or play, recreation, but whenever the season started, the coach had to get us in shape. He had to get us in basketball shape. I mean, competition shape. Every Tuesday and Friday playing, you know. So those first few weeks of practice was no joke. And anybody can tell you out of all the schools, especially I know about IC Norcom, and any of the players that played with me, before me, or after me will tell you the same. Those coaches will have our tongues hanging out. It might be a little different now because the guys play all the time, and but we were not in basketball shape by the time tryouts came. And once you made the team, that's when the work really started. So Thanks everybody for watching. This is the Slim Nation comes to TikTok, and I talked about my basketball uh, days. Hope you enjoyed it, and say hi to Abby and ADHD. ADHD. Okay. All right. Hi, Rhonda. And sorry, I wasn't saying shouting out to people while I was talking. I was so focused on talking. But Rhonda, thanks for watching. I was trying to maybe backtrack because some of these people are probably gone by now. But anyway, all those who were on, thank you for watching. And a lot of people joined, and whether they stayed on for a while or not. But thank you for watching. And next time I come on, I'm going to try to be conscious of people when they join. And if I can pronounce your name, I will say hi. If not, I will spell it. Or I'll do my best of pronouncing it phonetically. And we really appreciate it. Looks like 92 people came on, watched. And what's this? 1,000? I'll have to check out what happened after I go off and see how many people really watch. But hopefully people will start watching. Like I said, I'll be coming on from time to time, and I will be bringing on guests. If you want to come on and have a conversation with me, you know, sometime there'll be subjects that we can talk about, and sometimes there'll be spirit of the moment. And like I said earlier, I want to hear about your opportunity, your basketball days, or what you went through in high school or college, or as an adult. Some of the more challenging things that you have gone through that sort of there were lessons learned, or some things that you just weren't prepared for, but you endured. You you made it through it. Yeah, and especially those health uh, issues that you might have had. And for those who don't know, next month it'll be 11 years of me having a transplanted heart, having going through heart failure for about 3 years, waiting for a heart that was right for me. And after 3 tries, the third try was a charm. And next month in February to be, and February is heart month, so I'll be coming on during February with a whole lot of heart related stories, and I'll be looking for you if you have something to add to as far as heart issues you have dealt with, or if you're a heart transplant recipient. Be glad to get to know you and compare our notes. And but I was truly blessed to survive that, to make it through that. And next month I'll be talking a lot about that experience. And please tune in for that. But continue to watch, and I'll try to be more consistent with this. And like I said, I'm going to do some location things, be out there live doing some things outside of I call this my pocket studio. It's my little, right. This is the area. Let's see. Sometimes you get your hands. Which way is that? Okay. This is the area that my little pocket studio. And next time I come on, I'll show you all the little gadgets I have here, the different screens when I do my other shows. I have some YouTube channels that I do shows, but I just wanted to make my presence known here on TikTok. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you look forward. And I look forward to watching some of the things that you all are doing on TikTok. I'm always learning, always finding out new ways to do things. And uh, one thing, figure out how not to have this. You can take your glasses off and not have it. Uh, but it looks like I'm asleep because the light is kind of bright in my eyes when the glasses help. But we'll work on whatever kind of lighting we need to do, positioning of the lighting. I think the glare comes from from the computer, and I guess there's some things you can do. See if I bring the screen down like that and look at you like that, you probably can't see the glare as much. Am I correct? I can't see the screen without looking. I look down, I can see a little glare, but if I have the screen down, uh, I can't really see. Can't really see the comments or anything, but we're going to work on that too. All this is and let me let you know too that I guess you can tell by looking at me, I am a senior citizen that's still out here doing my thing. I'm in my 70s. I'm 71 years old, and I have a lot of experiences to share, but my interest is mostly in sharing my experiences, but also listening to your experiences. Because you're never too old to learn. You're never too old to have interactions with with people, and you should never be surprised at the situations some people find themselves in, or the miracle stories that people have, how they made it through tough situations, how they had comical situations in their life. So that's what we want to do here. We want to just have conversations and eventually have people up here. And I should have been going off, but I am really going off now. And you all take care. And let me see, in live. Take care and be aware, be informed, and most of all, be involved. Take care. It's a Slim Nation on TikTok.